Hi everyone, I'm Steve Stoller.
And I'm Shannah Haley, and this is Inside Plano, where we take you behind the scenes of our city.
We'll introduce you to the faces and places who help make this a great place to live.
And give us lots of reasons to love Plano.
Well, hey, Steve Stoller, we're back with another episode of Inside Plano.
Yeah, Shannah, this is like episode 35. Can you believe it?
I cannot believe it. And I also can't believe it's November of 2020, because in my mind, it's still March 2020. It's like the longest year, but it's gone by very fast.
I know you feel the same way I do. We will both be extremely happy when 2020 is history.
Absolutely. And I did treat myself to watching the original Jumanji movie, because so many people had been comparing 2020 to Jumanji, and I didn't get the reference because I'd never seen the film. And I thought, oddly accurate. It's just one unpleasant surprise after another. But you know what? This year, actually, while we're still in the middle of the pandemic, and certainly we're keeping a close eye on case counts and all of those things and continuing to be cautious, there have been some bright spots, wouldn't you say? It seems to be.
Absolutely. I know you're a Dallas Stars fan like I am, right?
Well, because I live in the Dallas area.
Of course. So, our Stars obviously were in the Stanley Cup Finals. And they didn't win. They went 6 games with the Tampa Bay Lightning. But even though the Stars lost, there was a really bright spot for us. One of our homegrown local athletes, Blake Coleman, played for the Tampa Bay Lightning and played a prominent role. He scored the second goal in Game 6. And while none of us are happy that the Stars lost, we are very, very proud of Blake Coleman. He's a homegrown kid. He played youth hockey in the Dallas Stars system. I think he was 5 years old when he went to his first Stars game. He was a big Stars fan. So there's an irony in this too, that he scored a goal in the Stanley Cup Finals against the team that he grew up loving. But we thought, we like to recognize people who accomplish great feats in Plano. And he obviously reached the pinnacle of his sport by winning the Stanley Cup. So what we did is the mayor and city council proclaimed November 2nd, Blake Coleman Day. And if you're watching this podcast after November 2nd, you can check out the video. We presented him with the proclamation and did a lot of other special things. But it's so cool that, he's the first, not only Planoite, but actually the first Texan to play in the NHL Stanley Cup Finals. And the first Texan in Planoite, obviously, to win the Stanley Cup. So we're very, very proud.
That's because Plano and Texas are not necessarily known as ice-covered pond areas where kids go out and play hockey.
That's right. I believe there's only 2 people from Plano who have ever played in the National Hockey League. So we're talking about a very, very small group of people. So we have to recognize that accomplishment. As much as there's a little bit of hurt there because the Stars lost, there's also an element of pride that somebody reached the pinnacle of their sport and profession. So I think it's apropos.
Oh, I 100% agree. And I have to be honest with you, Steve. Shannah, are you a Stars fan? Well, sure, because I root for our local teams. But I am even more a proud Plano resident, and given the choice, I'm gonna cheer and support a Plano homegrown person making good, whether that's in the world of arts, science, math, sports. So we are thrilled for Blake. We're excited for his family. His family still lives here in Plano, and what a special thing. Steve, you actually had a significant role in making the arrangements for his ceremony, and you've done a great job. It's just going to be
it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's going to be memorable for Blake, I think. And when you can say that the whole community supports you regardless of where you land in life, that's a good thing. It's a good thing for who we are. Well, hey, let's jump into our show. We actually have quite a bit to talk about because we did say things are kind of normalizing. We don't know what that normal looks like, but it does feel like there are things that are a little more routine than before. One thing I do want to start by talking about is the month of November. So, clearly this is our November 2020 podcast. The end of November, the Saturday after Thanksgiving, is traditionally known as Shop Small Business Saturday. So, and you hear that phrase all the time. There's a corporate partner, I believe it's American Express, that underwrites a national campaign emphasizing the importance of shopping local, and particularly shopping small businesses on that Saturday. Well, Steve, we think shopping local is important. Our special guest today, Sally Bain, who's the Director of Economic Development, talks about the role of shopping locally and how that helps the business community. So one thing that we decided to do this year, working with our great friends over at the Plano Chamber of Commerce and several departments here within the city, was to say we are not interested in shopping small on a Saturday. We're interested in shopping small and shopping locally every day. And so starting this month and moving forward, really probably for the next year, you'll hear us talking about, and you'll see video spots and digital ads and all kinds of things about why you need to shop locally. It really, if I could make a plea, it's not about the business, although it is about the business. It's about those businesses are owned by your neighbors, and the people who work in those businesses are your neighbors. So choosing to shop locally is really choosing to be a good neighbor. And we support one another that way. And we are so dependent on our small business community. They are what makes this a great place to live. Lots of wonderful food choices, lots of wonderful shopping choices. And I know those owners have worked very hard to implement COVID safeguards so that you can feel safe shopping. Many of them also offer curbside shopping. So if you choose to do one thing this year, choose to shop at a local Plano business. It really is going to matter. So shop small, shop local.
And that's great advice, Shannah, especially at a time because of the pandemic when so many of those businesses are struggling. They need our help, and we should definitely make the effort to help any way we can.
Absolutely. Some fun things are starting to happen. I saw that Plano Arts and Events has some new things on the agenda. They still have their art classes online, and those are super popular. Steve, you and I were reading some feedback from individuals who've participated in those classes. We've heard stories of folks who've incorporated that as part of their virtual learning for their kids. We've heard from individuals who take the art class while they're undergoing chemotherapy treatments because it helps them pass the time. It's just really a wonderful thing. So you might want to check that out. I am no artist, but they've made those classes very accessible, and you can work with what you have. And then if you're willing, they'll show your artwork online as well. So that's pretty fun. Here's something fun. Steve, did you and your wife go to the parking lot pictures that the Arts and Events hosted the other month?
We didn't, but boy, that sure sounds like a fun event. I think we're going to go to this next one.
Yeah, they sold out. Did you know that? I mean, it was just incredible.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
Yeah, 2 more scheduled. It was so successful. So if you're tired of firing up Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, and you just want to get out of the house, but not necessarily into a building with people you don't know, stay in your car, go to the Courtyard Theater and participate in a parking lot picture. So Arts and Events, tons and tons of great things going on. And of course, you'll find all of those in the Plano Online Guide or on Facebook. Steve, you just pushed out a press release at the end of October about Plano Public Libraries. You want to tell us what's changed with the library?
Yeah, we have what's called grab and go. So there's no seating in the libraries, but you can enter the library, you can browse the materials, look at books, and then they have self-checkout. There's also computer use. You could sign up for 1 session a day, and I believe it's a maximum of 2 hours for 1 session. So we're getting people in there. As a matter of fact, I talked to one of the library patrons the other day who frequents all of our libraries, and she talked about how happy she is that she can go back into the library and check out materials. And she had some really nice things to say about the library staff as well. That people were very friendly and accommodating and helpful at every turn. So we're very, very pleased and happy that we can provide a service. And Shannah, why don't you tell us a little bit about the safeguard labels that we're putting on some of our facilities to try and ensure safety and good health?
Absolutely. So Plano was the first city in America, I believe, to receive certification. We used an outside contractor. So we had an outside group looking at our process. Bureau Veritas was the name of the group, if anybody is curious about that. what they did was looked at the process for how do we have our staff trained? How do we clean our facilities? How do we message to the public? What signage is in the building? How do we make sure that we're cleaning after patrons have been in the building, whether that's municipal hall or a library or a swimming pool. So the first facility that was certified by Bureau Veritas was Jack Carter Pool. And that was so important because that gave us confidence, to open the pool and provide a structure for some family fun during the summer when really a lot of things were still closed. So we've been working through the city for facilities where we want the public to be back in. And of course, for our sake, for our employees too, it's very, very important that our employees stay healthy. So this provides for us a guidebook, just kind of a checklist to make sure that we are continuing to keep health and safety in the foremost mental position, that we have a process to follow. Really, really proud of the hard work that city staff has done to make sure that those protocols were in place. And if you are a Plano resident or if you're going to access one of those facilities, hopefully the certification just gives you an added measure of personal security and mental peace, knowing that we're doing what we need to do. We do not want you to be at risk of catching COVID. We certainly do not want our staff to be at risk of catching COVID. There are no guarantees in life, but there's certainly a lot of things that you can do to put yourself in the best position to prevent that from happening.
Right.
So speaking of the parks, since we did talk about Jack Carter Pool, a lot of things going on in the parks. And of course, our parks never closed. They were open all the time. And we did have the one pool open and our recreation centers are open. We are moving into the fall, and this is traditionally a time when a lot of capital improvement projects get underway. And so I want to talk about a few of those, because the city doesn't just undergo a renovation of a playground and say, here you go, residents, here's your new playground. There's really a lot of community input and feedback that happens with those projects. So I want to just mention a couple of those so people understand where they are. And if they live in the area, know that they can provide input, and it's a good time to do that. So if you happen to live near Old Shepherd Park, that's the next park that's scheduled for renovations. Clearly, we want community input because the neighborhoods around that park are going to be the ones that use them. We call those neighborhood parks, they're walkable from your house. We have a lot of details about the renovation, and there's a survey for you to take, and those are all on the city website. You know what that means. I put it in the show notes. So you just need to click on the show notes, go take that survey and give some valuable feedback so that you have a park that's designed to meet the needs of your neighborhood.
We have a few other renovations going on too, Shannah, like at Lieutenant Russell Stidham Park. It's been closed for renovations. The turf was recently laid, so now we're just waiting for that turf to establish. Our fingers are crossed that the park should be reopened in early November. Arbor Hills currently has some erosion control projects going on as well. In addition, there's a new restroom building being constructed. So for your safety, we always ask everyone to please obey the signage and stay out of the construction zones.
Yes, and when the weather's been nice, the construction crews at Arbor Hills have been given special permission to work on certain Saturdays. We always post that information out through the Plano Parks and Recs social pages, but we also put that in Nextdoor. Super, super important for your safety to stay out of those construction zones because active construction is going on and you don't want to get injured. Speaking of Arbor, we are still having our annual Arbor Day celebration, and here in Plano, it's our 31st anniversary of that. It'll be Friday, November 6th, and we're going to do it on Facebook. So it'll be a virtual event. We have talked in the past on the podcast to our urban forester, Angie Kralik. She's going to show you how to properly plant your own tree. And it's so important because your trees contribute to Plano's overall tree canopy. So making sure you plant it right for that tree's health.
And of course, don't forget Parks and Rec is now offering a variety of virtual and in-person classes for the whole family. From dance and fitness to learn to swim classes, nature walks, archery, and more. You can find something great for you in our online catalog. Link, of course, is in our show notes. One really cool program, Shannah, is the Nature at Night Family Night Hikes at Oak Point. A trained guide actually takes you through the nature preserve while you learn about the many constellations, how to navigate at night, astronomy, and even the nocturnal animals in the area. It's only $5 for Plano residents or $9 a family for non-Plano residents. And that's a price for the $5 also for a family as well.
You know, I have to say that that's a program I might do. I've long wanted to go on one of those hikes through Oak Point. It's a park that I'll stick to the page paths on, but I don't really know that park as well as I'd like to. And it would be great to have a guide taking us through, because it really is. That's where they do the raptor releases, correct?
Mm-hmm. Oak Point. Yeah.
Well, you know, we're in spirit of still things moving forward. One thing that is moving forward this year, we've had lots of questions about, is Texas Recycles Day. We are still holding that. It's going to be November 14th. It's from 8:30 to noon. Now, as with everything in life, it looks a little different this year. So we've made it smaller. So the footprint is smaller, and we're only going to really focus on 3 popular collections. First, electronics recycling, second, bicycles, and then third, document shredding. I want to kind of hang out on the document shredding because I see people in my personal next door talking about that all the time. I guess being stuck at home means cleaning out the files. And so what do you do with all of that paper? We do have monthly paper shredding available, and there's a fee per box for that to be dropped off. It's a nominal fee, but you know, it's not free. The nice thing about Texas Recycling Day, you can drop off 2 bankers boxes of documents totally free to be recycled. So make a note of that. If you've been storing up things that you need to shred, take advantage of Texas Recycle Days. We have, you know, more information in the show notes that tells you what you can drop off, particularly when it comes to electronics recycling. There's some guidelines on that, so you want to check that out before you load up the car and drive over.
Neighborhood Services does kind of a cool thing too. You can join your neighbors around the city online for Neighbors Connect Best Break. The meetings are the first and third Wednesday of every month or at noon. And the topics cover everything from property safety to zoning districts and much more.
So November is Adopt a Senior Pet Month. That's a national effort. And of course, Plano Animal Shelter is participating in that. We have information on that in the show notes. A lot of people have adopted pets this year. It's been an interesting trend. Have you heard about that too, Steve? There are folks that tell their pandemic pet stories.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I'm not immune to it. I don't know that we've talked about it on the podcast, but this longtime cat owner all of a sudden is the proud parent of a puppy. And it's been such a transition. I should have waited for Adopt a Senior Pet, because that probably would have been more my
Yeah, speaking of puppies, let's see. I got to show you.
Love it.
That's Teddy. Teddy's sleeping on the couch.
Oh,
there he goes.
Teddy, you're showing your belly on the podcast. That's really embarrassing.
He always keeps me company.
So warning for those who are listening to the podcast, I might have to put, instead of a TVG rating, it might be TVPG, because we saw a puppy belly. You know, really though, one thing that we've learned from adopting Glory Bee is that puppies are a lot of work. And the next time we get a dog, we'll probably get an older dog. And there are so many wonderful senior animals that are easier to care for. They're tamed down, they're looking for a good home. And what I've learned is that there is no pet like a rescue pet. They are so grateful to have a home. So please do go check out Pet Finder and give some of our older but still lovable animals a home. They're looking for you.
You know, Plano 911 wants to remind everyone that we are text to 911 capable. So very important, if you're unable to make a voice call, text to 911 is available. And we want to encourage all citizens to fill out a smart 911 profile. The website is www.smart911.com. Our care program.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Shannah.
I won't put you on the spot to ask you if you filled out your Smart 911 profile yet, but I did.
I did too. No, you can put me on the spot.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. You know,
yes, I did.
It didn't take very long, right? I mean,
a few minutes.
What I love about it, though, was that you could be very specific. You are in control of how much information you provide. And I thought that was great. You could tell them whether you had a 2-story home, 1-story home, if you had pets, if you had special medication needs, the name of your partner and other people that are living in the house with you. So it's just really your emergency contact information. It's fantastic. And Steve, just 2 weeks ago, I signed up for it like the week that we implemented text to 911. I got an email from the program asking me to validate my information. So it's like every 6 months, it asks you to validate things. So it helps you remember where you might have information on file. So what a fantastic service. So I'm sorry to have interrupted you, but I really think if you're thinking that it's going to take forever to register, it doesn't. It's like 5 minutes.
No. We also have a care program, Shannah, that's available for people on short or long-term rehab and the elderly. And we also offer virtual school and business education opportunities.
Yeah, that care program is a daily call just to make sure, that you're doing well. It's automated. And if you don't pick up the phone, then a person calls you back. So it's a great program. We love the work that 911 does. They are not just for emergency calls. They're really about education and taking care of people.
Our special guest on Inside Plano today is our Economic Development Director, Sally Bain. Sally, welcome to our podcast.
Hi, Steve. Thank you for having me.
We always like to start off these interviews, Sally, by asking people, what is it something about you that the rest of us don't know?
Well, let's see. I bet a lot of people don't know that I was a gymnast and that I started when I was 5. And I competed nationally all the way up until I was 18. Wasn't quite good enough to be on a university team, but I did take it. In college. You had to take 2 PE courses, and I got an A. So I feel pretty good about that. But what I really liked about gymnastics was it lets you operate independently. So you do the apparatus individually. And then you also function as a team because your team is also measured on everyone's collective success. So it's kind of a great paradigm for moving forward in the business world and incorporating that same kind of philosophy.
Very good. Did you have a specialty of all the different activities with gymnastics? What was your specialty?
Well, I always did all around, but I guess probably my best performance was on the floor exercise.
The things we don't know about our coworkers. Well, Sally, let's start with some basics. Sometimes people call your department Plano Economic Development Corporation, and that's not correct. We hear that with a lot of other cities in North Texas. Can you explain why we're not?
Absolutely. So Plano is a member city of the Metropolitan Transit Authority, DART. And in fact, Plano is the only member of DART in all of Collin County. Sales tax in the state of Texas is capped at 8.25. So these cities in and around the Dallas-Fort Worth area and across the state of Texas that were not capped at their sales tax could hold local elections to dedicate that 1 cent to economic development. It allows them to set up the corporations you're referring to, an economic development corporation. So they get 1 cent of the sales tax dedicated to incentives and the operation of their corporation. Plano is, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Sally. So how do we fund I'm sure you're getting into this. How do we fund ours?
Exactly what I was going to talk about. So we are funded really through property tax. We are a department of the city of Plano, so we're part of the municipal government. And our incentives in our department are funded from the tax rate. 2 cents of the tax rate is peeled off and dedicated to economic development, and that's what runs our department and also provides us with the incentives that we might consider and offer to a prospective company.
Sally, are there any potential changes coming to our funding mechanisms? We've heard about the Chapter 380 agreements.
We don't expect there to be any changes in our ability to offer incentives. which continue to be such a critical part of the decision any company deploys to make a selection of a community. We don't expect that to change, but what might change is the way not just Plano or another city in Texas, but really every city across the United States is in the middle of contemplating how the pandemic has changed or should change the program parameters. So we're going to have to take a look after this is over on the new paradigm that companies are putting forward to operate, and how and if that impacts our program and the way in which we consider projects.
You were talking about the pandemic. I want to stay on that topic. Obviously, COVID has had a tremendous impact on individuals, families, and businesses alike. The city administered a small business grants program using funding through the Federal CARES Act. Can you give us an idea of the impact that program has had?
Yes, so we deployed in phase one of our CARES grant about $1.1 million to about 66 companies. The maximum grant could be up to $25,000, and the average grant really ended up being about $17,000, with the lowest grant being at $6,000. That was important because the focus of that grant was to reimburse people for rent and utilities. Those were the two primary things that this amazing team within the city of Plano put forward. We had a very interdepartmental effort to do this, and it is significant to be able to administer a grant like this, because you have to make sure that when you're audited, and not if you're audited, but when you're audited about these grants, that you have the backup that proves that the grant could be supported. Now, that was kind of our first round of grants. The second has been embraced by and pushed forward by Collin County. And Collin County is using not internal resources like we did, but has hired a third-party administrator to push out the second phase of grants county-wide.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. There's an effort, I understand, the city working with the county to promote a broader Collin Cares small business grant program.
It is. Our first phase of grants kept the lights on and the doors open, or at least reimburse people for their having done that. But as we all know, there are more layers of costs associated with operating these small businesses. Those are businesses that were 100 employees or less. And so this second round of grants has a broader net for what someone can receive a reimbursement for. Remembering that the farther we go down the road, the more complicated the administration of these grants becomes, because you have to be careful not to ever duplicate payment for something they may have received consideration for in the past.
You're in contact with the business community on a daily basis. What's your assessment of how Plano businesses and their workforces are navigating the COVID pandemic?
I think the private sector in general is cautiously optimistic that sometime by the end of the first and maybe the second quarter of next year, that things will normalize. I talk about there was a before COVID and there will be an after, but the after is definitely going to be different. And the rate of change and how we work would have evolved eventually. It's likely. We studied this, ironically, about a year and a half ago. But now this pandemic has accelerated some of the things that we were predicting and expecting to occur in the future. So you're going to see a more hybrid workforce. That's almost a uniform comment we receive when we ask the business community, what does your after look like? But people, generally speaking, want to be together, actually want to be doing this in front of you and with you and not remotely. And I think that's a very human need. We need to be able to network and brainstorm, and we do need to be together at some level. And so I think that will occur. I saw nationally where Microsoft said that their people will be in the office at least 50% of the week. So their work week will require them to be there at least half the time. And I think that's going to be an early model for most companies. They're going to get their people back. A lot of this has to do with, our comfort and our ability to get a vaccination and start feeling comfortable about the way in which we can be together and interact and actually benefit from the synergies of that.
There are those businesses and industries that are doing well during this uncertain economic time. How is Plano capitalizing on those businesses?
Well, we understand that there are sectors, industry sectors, that are operating at more than 100% right now because they're responding to elements of the pandemic. And also people who had niche markets where they weren't affected by the pandemic. And those people are doing really well. So what we've tried to do is, of course, assist them. Some of them are existing companies in Plano, and we place a lot of emphasis on retaining and expanding our existing industries. So we're trying to help them create that expansion in that industry that is doing okay here in our community. It's been a real focus of how we're moving forward during this.
Sally, I'm just curious, one of your roles in economic development is obviously to go out and recruit new businesses to come to Plano.
Yes.
How has the pandemic affected that?
Well, nationwide, that's been affected. So we're doing that virtually, just like we're having this conversation. It is a big relationship business, and our connection to the site selection community or the consultants who help companies navigate the site selection process, we have relationships, long-standing relationships with those people. So thank goodness, because that has allowed us to kind of seamlessly continue to perform our assistance and aid to those companies that are making those kinds of decisions.
No one ever wants to see our local businesses suffer.
Right.
Is there any simple things that Plano residents can do to support our business community?
Well, I've been a long supporter of Shopping Plano. So important to keep your sales tax dollars in our community. And for 24 years that I've worked here, I've put that into people's heads because it's important for our local economy. We need to help our existing businesses thrive and maintain their presence in our community. But by also shopping in a city that is perhaps not a DART member city, you are giving them sales tax money that they use in their program to promote themselves and provide incentives. And I just think if people knew that, they would maybe think twice about shopping across the municipal boundaries of Plano. I always joke, when I talk about that in a group, no one wants to make eye contact with me.
Thank you, Sally. We really appreciate having you on our podcast. And for people who don't know you, who don't know your track record in the city of Plano, I wish they would find out, because it is an amazing track record. And the list of businesses that have come to the city since you've been the director of economic development is like a who's who of business giants. And we owe you so much gratitude for the job that you've done through the years. And you're an amazing woman. And I always refer to you as the queen of economic development, as you know.
Well, Steve, I really have to say something about that. It's been really my privilege to lead this effort in the city, but we all know what a team effort this is. So it's back to gymnastics. Your individual performance is part of the team's performance, which gets you to your goal. And Plano has this incredibly deep bench of devoted and exceptional employees that contribute to this product that economic development gets to sell. So we owe our success to all of the people in this community and all the employees of the city of Plano who help us make it happen.
We have a fabulous team, but not all of us can do a graceful dismount from the parallel bars.
Well, I seriously doubt I can do that anymore.
Sally Bain, thank you so much for being on our podcast. Sally Bain, our Economic Development Director, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I always love hearing from Sally Bain. You are not kidding when you call her the Queen of Economic Development, and just amazing.
Yeah, she is an amazing person and a very nice person too. We enjoy working with her.
Yeah, one thing that we chatted about with her after, our recording session, Plano brings much more to the table than economic incentives. She did talk about incentives, and incentives clearly are important because they're important nationally and by the way, globally. Other countries use incentives. So it's just, it's an expectation, and it's part of how economic development happens everywhere. Plano wins as well, not only because of that and being very careful with how we use money, because we don't have as much money to work with as other cities might, but because of the place that we live. We have incredible schools. Plano ISD, of course, great schools, but we also have a network of wonderful private schools that are here in the city. We have Coleman College, so great workforce training. Wonderful housing. You mentioned our neighborhood services team earlier. They do a great work of partnering with HOAs and community groups to keep our neighborhoods thriving. So Plano is the full package, and that's why we have been so successful in becoming a business-friendly city and a place that is preferred for corporations to relocate to.
3 words you always hear associated with economic development: quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these companies, they want a place for their employees where there's a very high quality of life. And there's so many reasons why they choose Plano when they make a move.
Absolutely. Well, November is important for a couple of reasons, right?
Well, Shannah, I got some bad news for you. Unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have 1 extra hour of 2020.
I reject that.
Daylight savings time is coming November 1st. And remember, it's fall back. Yes. So on November 1st, we're reminding you, turn your clocks back 1 hour. And it's also a great time to change the batteries in your smoke alarms as well.
Unless you want part of your 2020 narrative to be the 2 a.m. battery running low siren wail, it's great to go ahead and just have that be part of your process.
Yes, I think we had a coworker, didn't have the siren wail, but it was a constant beep every 10 seconds or so.
Yes, and that coworker called Plano Fire Rescue and asked for assistance. That would be me because I didn't know what was going on. Well, the truth was we have a wire-in smoke alarm, so we couldn't figure out what was going on. We didn't realize that the wire-in had a battery backup. So just over time, the battery backup died. But boy, it was a little embarrassing to have our coworkers come out and help us, but that's what Plano's all about, right? Great customer service.
That's right.
Oh my God.
And Shannah, there's also a lot of construction underway in the city, and we'll be talking about it during our November 12th town hall meeting.
Yeah, you and I worked with Plano Parks and Recreation, Public Works Department, the Engineering Department to really identify the biggest projects that are actively underway. So not things that we're thinking about doing, but projects that are actually turning dirt, closing down lanes, all of that kind of stuff for the next 6 months. So construction that you're not really going to be able to avoid. If you live in Plano, then you get community impact news in your home once a month. We put a map with all of those projects in it 2 months in a row. So if you missed it the first month, check it out the second month. It's really helpful. And we'll actually be talking from that list. It's a great opportunity to ask questions about roads that are completely being rebuilt, roads that are being rehabbed, median improvements, traffic light timing, all of those kinds of things. Infrastructure is always one of our most popular town halls. I wonder why. So anyway, so join us. We'll be on Facebook, we'll be on Plano TV, and of course you can join us by phone and ask your questions. Well, it's hard to believe, but we're at the end of another Inside Plano. It's gone by quickly, unlike 2020, and it's been a lot more pleasant. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. Number 35 in the can.
That's right. Well, Plano, we love talking to you each month, and it's been such a great learning experience for us, finding new things to talk about when things are all pivoting all the time. Steve and I enjoy answering your questions. Thank you so much. So many of you have started sending us questions through Ask Plano at plano.gov. We use those to help plan the podcast. So I can already give you a sneak peek that next month, most popular request that came in on Ask Plano was about sidewalks. So we'll be talking about sidewalks next month with our Director of Public Works, Jerry Cosgrove. So until then, stay safe, stay smart. Remember to follow the latest guidelines from the governor of the state of Texas. And until then, we'll talk to you later.
See you next month, everybody.
Bye.
And that's it for our Inside Plano. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did doing it.
If you have any comments or suggestions, send them to us at askplano@plano.gov. Bye.
Talk to you next month. The Inside Plano podcast is brought to you by the City of Plano and 97.5 KLAK.